one of the reasons I even ran was during COVID, we did the whole lockdown thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting out there with a lot of reflection time.
Yeah.
We're all at home. And just had a moment of reflecting of, my grandfather, he'd served in World War II. He had passed away by 2020. But I was just kind of, role playing in my head, like, what would he think if he were here right now? And I just thought he would be shocked. He would be shocked at the state of our country. And it really gave me that moment of reflection as my kids are running around. I was like, I wonder what it's going to be like when they have kids, or again, when I'm died and passed away and it's 80 years down the road, what's the country going to look like?
Yeah.
And I didn't like the images I had in my head. Honestly, how I imagined if our country kept its current trajectory, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And so, for me, I was like, I can either bite the bullet and do the hard thing right now,
Mm-hmm.
or I can live out in comfort. Things probably won't be that bad for me.
Yeah.
My kids or grandkids, I think things aren't going to look so good. And it kind of came down to going, I would rather pay the cost myself
Mm-hmm.
so that they don't have to.
Hi, my name is Derek Hines. I'm the managing partner for Gaddis Premier Wealth Advisors, and I'm very excited about our guest today. So today I have with us Cody Maynard, and he is a state representative for District 21 here in Oklahoma. Thanks for joining us, Cody.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Derek.
Yeah, appreciate it. So is this your first podcast? How many podcasts you've done?
This will be number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah, number 2.
Nice. Well, I'm sad that we're not number 1.
Sorry.
Is this the first video you've done?
No, not the first.
Oh man.
Sorry.
Strike 2.
Yeah.
All right, let me get back to my notes here. Shift questions. So Cody, if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little bit of your personal background.
Yeah. So, basically I moved into Oklahoma in 2010. So I was born and raised in Texas. Went to school at Abilene Christian University. That's where I met my wife. And then shortly after, got my master's in accounting. We moved up to Durant and started our family here. And so my background is in accounting. As I said, I'm a CPA.
Mm-hmm.
And then after several years living in the community here, I made the crazy decision to go run for office.
Yep.
You can obviously tell that worked out because I'm a state representative.
Yeah, you were successful.
I was successful. But again, I don't recommend that on anybody unless you really feel called, because it is a long road and a lot of work. But I am very, very pleased to be able to serve my community this way.
Yeah. So what made you decide to run for office?
Oh man, that's a long story.
We've got plenty of time. We got time.
I would say it was probably a series of moments over a number of years. So I had just maybe a number 5-6 years ago where I first kind of had that random thought pop in your head, like maybe I should run for office someday. And, that first thought, I was kind of like, that's way out of my comfort zone. I'm not going to do that. Told my wife about it after I got the courage up.
That's probably the first mistake.
Yeah, it was the first mistake, because her first thought was, hey, I think you'd be great at that. So I was like, absolutely not. But through kind of just praying about it, the weird thing was, had that thought and had a sense of peace about it, but through praying about it, we had just had our first kid. So
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 kids now, so 11-year-old, 9-year-old, and 7. But at the time, I think I had just one child at that time. And so kind of put it on the back burner, really praying through it. I was like, I think I am called to do that someday, but that may be 10 plus years out in the future. So
Yeah.
We kind of put it on the shelf. And so kind of roll forward a number of years later, in Oklahoma, because if you have listeners outside Oklahoma, we have term limits. So in Oklahoma, our state representative hit his 12-year mark, so he was term limited out. And one of my friends called me up and she asked if I would consider running, which my first response was absolutely not.
Yeah.
Wasn't in my current plan, still in my head, that was 10 years plus. I was thinking maybe when my kids are out of high school, off college, then I would consider that. And even in my head, it wasn't at a state level necessarily. It was just office of some kind, maybe local, something like that. But she asked me if I would pray about it, which is, my second dangerous mistake is like, sure, yeah, I'll pray about it. That's kind of the thing you say sometimes just to get them like, I'll pray about it, but I'm not going to do it. But through about 6 weeks of prayer, me and my wife really had to take it to the Lord, because it was the hard part for me. The thing that kept me from being able to say yes was realizing that I would be moved away really for about 4 months of the year.
Yeah.
In Oklahoma City, which is, from Durant is a good 2.5 hour drive. So I'd live up there, 4 or 5 days out of the week. And I knew that would be hard on my kids. So I had, a 5-year-old was my youngest at that time. And that was a hard decision. I even talked through it with my oldest, who was 9, old enough to kind of understand what it looked like. And one of those really sweet moments as a father, but also really hard, was seeing my son actually take that really seriously, to the point of like, it's always before bed when they talk to you.
Of course, yeah. Everything happens right before bed.
As emotions are high. He said, "Dad, I really don't want you to leave, but I know you're supposed to do that."
Yeah.
And so he knew the sacrifice even at the time, and those were those very special moments where you kind of watch your kids have to process sacrifice, and it has been. I'll tell you, it's been hard every time when we step into session and I go to the Capitol. It is not an easy process on the kids.
Yeah.
Usually they get used to it about the time I
have to come back. Yeah.
But that's kind of been a little bit of just the process of how I got into office. Obviously there's a lot more detail behind all of that, but that's the high level version.
Yeah. So tell me more about your kids. I know we have, our sons are the same age. So.
Yep. So my oldest, Aslan, he's 11. He's about to go into 7th grade, which is a huge step. I don't even think I'm ready for that. I only have a few more years with him at home.
Yeah.
Then my daughter, Aurora, she is 9, and she loves being 9. So she's having a good time swimming. And then my youngest son, Anakin, he is 7, and he is counting down the months to turn in 8.
Yeah.
Let me know how close his birthday is every single month. But there are tons of fun. We just did soccer together. Our kids had soccer over the summer. So that was Anakin's first.
Yeah. You're signed up again. Have you signed up yet? Okay. So soccer signups are coming.
Yeah. We did do soccer camp.
Yeah.
That was another big jump for him to go to soccer camp. But
did you guys do the one in Durant, or did you drive to Sherman?
We drove to Sherman.
Okay. Yeah, so did we.
So, but it was really great. He had a good time. Got his custom shirt, so it felt super cool. And he's liking soccer. Yeah.
Did I tell you? So Jesse hurt his foot. Did I tell you this?
You did tell me that. I did see him at church though. It was an injury.
Yeah, he was on crutches. So he's just you understand. You have a almost 8-year-old boy, and they're just out of control. There's no governor, no speed limit. And he was playing, and a table or something fell over on his foot, and he was starting to process the fact that his foot was hurt, and he wasn't going to get to play soccer, and he was like, "But Daddy, this is my kicking foot." I'm like, "Well, son, maybe you should learn how to kick with both feet." But needless to say, they're excited about soccer season.
Yeah, not the kicking foot.
Yeah, not the kicking foot. Oh man. So what are some of the ways, what are some of the things that you have done to, I guess, mitigate that impact or prioritize family while you're in session?
Yeah. So, some of the things, while you're in session, I just try to do my very, very best that when I'm home, I'm home.
Yeah.
I can't do that perfectly, but for me, that's where when I'm in session, I'm working and reading bills from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. when I go to bed. That way, when I get home, I can be present with my kids and my family and not have to really be bringing all that with me. But out of session, I try very hard in the summers. We schedule family vacations. I've even already got it blocked out on my calendar. I just block out some times of this is a family day. Nothing gets scheduled on that day.
Yeah.
So I try to put multiples of those calendar so that we can be intentional to make sure that we have family time, because it's one of the reasons I ran was for my family.
Yeah. Yes.
I know I didn't talk about this earlier, but one of the reasons I even ran was during COVID, we did the whole lockdown thing. We're sitting out there with a lot of reflection time.
Yeah.
We're all at home. And just had a moment of reflecting of, my grandfather, he'd served in World War II. He had moved away by 2020. But I was just kind of, role playing in my head, like, what would he think if he were here right now? And I just thought he would be shocked. He would be shocked at the state of our country. And it really gave me that moment of reflection as my kids are running around. I was like, I wonder what it's going to be like when they have kids. Or again, when I'm died and passed away and it's 80 years down the road, what's the country going to look like?
Yeah.
And I didn't like the images I had in my head. Honestly, of how I imagined if our country kept its current trajectory, it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, I can either bite the bullet and do the hard thing right now, or I can live out in comfort. Things probably won't be that bad for me.
Yeah.
My kids or grandkids, I think things aren't going to look so good. And it kind of came down to going, I would rather pay the cost myself so that they don't have to, or so that they don't have as much of a cost to pay. I think no generation gets away without having to pay a price for your personal freedoms and your liberty to protect them. But if you put it off, that leaves one generation having to pay all of it on their own.
Yeah.
I didn't want that to be on my watch. I wanted to go to the end of my life and say I did what I could to give them the best chance possible.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, those are difficult thoughts. I mean, it's really hard to be that, to get that perspective, to think about what would, our grandparents or great-grandparents think about our current culture, and what are we doing to impact and influence that culture?
Yeah. Well, and it's just, things have changed so rapidly, even in just, I'm 38, so just for perspective, 20 years, I got out of high school and I was 18. The changes we've seen in our culture just in 20 years, I don't think any of us would have even imagined to be possible when we were in high school or when we were kids. And the pace at which we are losing traditional moral values in the country is really kind of astounding. Right now, and I'll just kind of bring a little current events in. So in Oklahoma, our superintendent of education has issued some rule that he wants the Bible, not religion taught in schools, but the history, the role of the Bible in our country brought back into our curriculum, which that really shouldn't be a controversial issue. Like if you go look at, the Mayflower Compact, you're going to see Christianity and God talked about in that document. If you go look at our founding fathers, if you look at the quotes that are not edited, they very frequently talk about the impact of God, religion, or as George Washington would often say, divine providence. The hand of providence was at work. And so our country is full of history of how the religion of our founders impacted them and drove them even to fight for their liberties. And so the fact that this is a controversial topic to bring up in our country or state kind of astounds me, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I bring that up to say just in 20 years, a lot has changed. And if you rolled back 60 years, nobody would blink an eye at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the other cultural hot topics or cultural issues that you see on the horizon?
I mean, obviously, a hot topic one is the transgender movement or LGBTQ plus. We just had a recent ruling come out of California where they passed a law that schools don't need to inform parents anymore if kids are struggling or making gender transition decisions, which is a huge affront to parental rights because parents need to know that kind of stuff. But I would say that's one of the other main hot topics besides religion right now is the transgender movement, and how do we navigate that as a culture? So, again, I'm watching, there are areas in Oklahoma where we're seeing, again, you're still having drag queen shows with little children in it, which to me, drag queen or not, we would never have allowed a child to be present in front of any kind of show that would have sexual display in it.
Yeah.
Just that alone is groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Much less, us saying it's acceptable to bring kids to that kind of stuff. So, we need to protect the hearts of our kids from just overt sexuality. And that's what I kind of see as I'm having to have conversations with my 7-year-old that I never thought I would have to have at that age.
Yeah.
The age of discussion is having to move back from when we were kids, and I'm sure from when our parents were kids, having to have that conversation earlier, and they're not able to process it. They don't fully understand.
Yeah.
And that to me is a big struggle.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, I think about the community that I grew up in, very small community, 5,000 people, northern Oklahoma. I can't even remember when I was first exposed to that thought.
Yeah.
If I was to guess, it was probably college.
Yeah.
So early 20s.
Yeah.
And our children are having to process this at 7.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're asking a ton of, in the sense of, I mean, even the thought of like, pick your gender like at 5. It's like, what I want for lunch today. Much less any. And so anyways, that's a very hard conversation to have with kids. So I bring that up in the sense of our culture is in a very progressive place. We're moving away from traditional values. And that to me, we're watching, if you look at polling numbers, the decline of Christianity and just, I would say, organized religion at large, not just Christianity.
Yeah.
Other religions also have very stringent set of moral codes and moral standards that we're just watching those be abandoned.
Yeah.
So the impact that's going to have on the future generations, I think, it's going to be immense.
Yeah. So what do you think? I mean, what is the role of government in helping us navigate this?
Well, I don't know that is government's proper role.
Okay.
To be honest, really, with our kind of government, now other governments across the world can't speak.
We say so, and when you say our kind of government, you are specifically speaking of like the United States government.
United States.
Yep.
We don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic, which has a form of democracy. Yes, but a pure democracy, right, is just 50 plus 1%. Whatever they vote, that's what happens. In a republic, you elect a representative, and what those representatives vote is what happens. So it puts a little bit of distance, I would say, between pure democracy and what I would say a representative form of democracy.
Yeah.
But
so let's talk about it just real quick. So it differentiates between the two. But what is the strength in our form of government? Like why do we have constitutional republic? Yeah.
So the strength in it, number one, is it's hard. Like our government is set up to be hard to change.
Yeah.
That's on purpose. Now that can frustrate many of us. It frustrates me sometimes. However, our founders were very, very smart. They studied the different governments that had taken place in the world, and they came up with a new form, right? A what they called a constitutional republic. And so in that form, it's hard to change, which is actually very, very helpful because it insulates us a little bit from just the whims of new fads that come up in culture that our government should be stable. And that's one of the things it does provide. The other thing that, you'll see in a pure democracy is people learn very, very quickly that they can vote for themselves to have benefits. And so I'll just use minimum wage as an example. Most average people are like, hey, would I like to be paid more?
Of course.
Well, if a vote's going to come up to get me paid more, the answer is always yes. I mean, from working in the finance industry.
Yeah.
If you do that, there's ramifications. And that means every business has higher costs. Now they have to charge more. And what ends up happening is inflation goes up. There's a whole cascading effect. So very similar scale, you can vote for yourself welfare benefits. So anything you can vote for yourself a benefit, a pure democracy, people figure out very, very quickly they can do it.
Yep.
In a constitutional republic, in a Republican form of government, you have a little bit of distance where you have people representing not just their constituents, but also making sure, is the government viable? Is it going to be sustainable? And so it sometimes gets people voted out of office, but
yeah,
I would say the flip side is you do have that a little bit of a check and balance where you get to weigh out those decisions and not just have, if I get a benefit, I'm voting yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that fantastic answer. So so it's not necessarily the role of government to, help our children navigate these issues, but how do we help our children, navigate these issues?
That's a great question. And that's, to me, is the role of what I would say. I'm a Christian. That's the role of the church.
Yes.
There is, and if you're not a Christian, if you're listening to this, then that's the role of your own religion.
Right.
But the government was not set up to be the moral arbiter of the people. And now, it doesn't mean, I've heard a lot of people talk about, they'll say, well, you can't legislate morality. I understand the heart of what they're saying. I can't pass a law and change someone's heart. 100% agree. Can't do that. However, every law we pass up there is based on someone's set of right and wrong.
Yeah.
We have a law that says you can't murder. Why? Because generally, we as a population agree that is not.
That's wrong.
That's wrong, right? So we have a law. So that is a form of legislating morality. So I tell everybody, someone's morality will be legislated. You just need to decide who. Again, a law passed can't change someone's heart, but we will put in place laws that reflect our beliefs. And that's why I think it's very important that you understand when you elect somebody to represent you, that you know what they believe and what they stand for, because when they go cast votes, they will vote based upon their set of values and a set of beliefs, unless they're just a disingenuous person. But it again, coming back to whose role is it? Ultimately, it's the role of parents. When it comes to teaching kids morals, that is a father and mother's role and job, and it is their primary responsibility, nobody else's. The state does not raise your kids. The state does pay for education, but that does not abdicate a parent's personal responsibility to raise their kid.
Yeah. That's good. So what are some of the things that you and your wife do to be intentional about how you're raising your children?
Yeah. So, obviously for us, we have regular rhythms of going to church every single week. That's a hugely important just rhythm of being in church. For me, it comes down to, it's just little things you can do that it just builds in a culture and habits that, when we drive to school, the kids know as soon as we pull onto the street off the driveway, it's prayer time. And so each one of them will pray over our day. Same thing when we come home. As soon as we leave, it's time to pray on the way home. When we go to bed, it's prayer time. So it's just having some rhythms in place like that. My kids don't always like it, but when they do something wrong, I usually bring up a Bible verse. And if they really push back, it's well, you get to write the Bible verse out.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. You can transcribe it.
Yeah.
So, you can do different things like that just to even ingrain those things, but they will come back to your memory when you're an adult. You will remember those sayings that your parents, those things that you were told over and over. I have them run through my own head frequently. Most people have heard, can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
Right.
The golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. So usually I just say the first half, it's if you can't treat me, or if you have nothing nice to say, just leave it blank and they'll fill it in. I'm all right. So should you have said what you just said? So it's just constant coaching, constant training, and then I would say putting in rhythm. Kids need to learn that they're not the center of the world.
That's right.
Sometimes, and my kids said it this week, I don't want to go to church. Guess what? I don't want to go to church this morning either. I'm tired, but we're going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yes.
And so we have to be trained that our emotions, our feelings don't get to run our day, even though does that feel nice? Sometimes.
Yeah.
But if you don't let principles guide you and guide your decisions, you'll get pulled all over the place by every change that happens in life.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I was thinking, oh man, I think when we get to a certain place, my son just knows that's where the seatbelt comes off. We should probably be more intentional about that. Yeah. What are some of the guiding principles that you have to just, manage your day-to-day, manage your life, manage your family?
Yeah. Man, I wish I could say I'm super consistent with it. I'm not always.
Yeah.
Many guiding principles, though, for me is often if I have to sit down and just ask, what Jesus were here, how would he behave in this moment?
Yeah.
Because often I find myself not behaving how I think he would. So that's a good heart check of just, I had that conversation with my kids just the other day of, they're having a fight. Like, okay, let's just pause. If Jesus was in the room, what do you think he would say to your brother or your sister?
Yeah. Would he have pinched him? Would he have punched him?
Yeah. Would that have happened? Probably not. So that's always a good guiding check. Another thing is just, we kind of have some family core values we've laid out. So ours, I'll just lay them out here, was responsibility. So that we're going to be a people that we take personal responsibility for what goes on in our life. So yes, there's outside forces that can happen, but we get to choose how to respond. And so I'm responsible for the outcomes in my life. Integrity is a big core value for us, that we're going to do the right thing even when nobody's watching and when no one will know. So personal integrity, we always strive to be learners. So just because you know something doesn't mean you know everything.
Yeah.
And so always be ready to learn, to be quick to research, and to be curious. Curiosity really is extremely important, that it keeps you flexible, where you don't just think, I know everything about somebody. It's like, be curious, ask them questions. And then the last one is enjoyment. So you have to keep everything in balance. Some people live just for fun and enjoyment. That's why in our family, we put that at the end of, get your work done first, but don't forget that God made you to enjoy life. You're not here as a robot. You're not here just as a worker. You're here to enjoy everything that God created. And so we make intentional time, to make sure that we are enjoying nature. We're enjoying, family, friends, that we take time to do that as well. So those are just some of the high level big principles we kind of lay out there to help guide what we do and how we do it.
Yeah. How did you come up with those?
It was a pretty good couple hour sit down session with me and my wife, where we were just like, we need to lay down kind of what are our family rules? Like, what are those unspoken things that we tend to, whether you say, like, you might get onto somebody if they violated, or when you get upset, why'd you get upset? Like, what value do you hold that got violated? And so we kind of use some of those questions of like, okay, when something bothers you, why did it bother?
Yeah.
And we kind of landed on these 4 things of like, well, maybe somebody wasn't taking personal responsibility, or it showed a lack of integrity. They lied or whatever. Yeah. And we kind of use those things, those questions, to help find some of those values. But it was hard to get down to 4. My goal with my wife was like, we don't need to have 5 or less.
Yeah.
Like, can we, we had a bunch. We had a whole page, 20, we started grouping and consolidating, like, these 2 really go together. So that was kind of the main process of really trying to get down to those, so that we could also tell our kids. But that was the other thing, is try to make it simple so our kids understand, like, the reason that bothers us, it violates a family value of ours. We're going to be people who are learners. We're going to be people who have integrity. We're going to be personally responsible. Our kids love to complain. They get in trouble. It's like, no, my sister did it. I'm like, but what are you responsible for? And I always bring it back to that, because there's a lot of stuff that can happen in life that you have no control over. And I never discount that. But that's a very victim mentality. Of course, to live from that perspective. I want my kids to be empowered. Mm-hmm. They can always ask the question, yes, that happened, but what can I do?
Yeah.
What am I responsible for? What can I have influence over? And then you're responsible to do that. So,
yeah. Have you ever read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning?
I have. That was a hard read.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very emotional read, and just being faced with the darkness of humanity, of where can, like, how evil can humans really get? And I mean, he saw it.
Yeah.
But that book, yes, I have read through it, and I think one of the quotes, I may not quote it perfectly from it, but he basically said that the best of us never came back out from those concentration camps, because they were the ones who gave up their food forever. Yep. So for him, his perspective is like, a lot of the people that have the best character never survive.
Yeah.
Because they took care of others first.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just, anyway, that I did a Holocaust museum tour recently in DC, and that was also hard just to go see it and, see the pictures, look at the videos of the stuff that happened. So,
yeah, I just got through reading, I think it's the Killing of General Patton.
Okay.
And phenomenal book. But again, very, very, it's the same, World War II, same era. And, in the end of the book, they get into kind of some of the things that were going on in Nazi Germany and the just the atrocities that were put on those people. And it's difficult to read. Like, it's hard to understand that society, and even some of the things we're talking about today, like degradation of society, degradation of culture. And, a lot of these things, they happen, I love the core value that you guys are learners, because a lot of these things, they start with a thought or an idea, right? And then that thought or idea takes root, and then it manifests in our culture.
Yeah. And that's where we need to be aware of our own thoughts. And honestly, a lot of us today aren't deep thinkers.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we think we're the smartest generation because of how much information we have access to.
Yeah.
But information and intelligence are not the same thing.
Not even close.
I'll just tell you, I've taken a little bit of a journey of just reading through some of the writings of the founding fathers of our country since being elected.
Mm-hmm.
And I have come to a conclusion that not a single person I know that's elected in office is anywhere near as smart as any of them were.
Yeah.
Their depth of thought was just off the charts. And
yeah.
When I look around at our just, culture today, we think we know a lot, but we really don't have depth of thought.
That's right.
Behind a lot of things. So.
Yeah, we have access to so much information, but we have no depth of understanding.
It's almost too much information.
I agree.
A little bit, it's like information overload. When we go to schools now, you're taught on such a wide breadth of subjects
mm-hmm.
that you really don't become an expert in anything. And some people do. They'll go down masters and doctorate, and they really do dive into it. But I would say, by and large, we don't have a lot of depth. We have just a lot of breadth of knowledge.
Yeah.
And even at that, that's only those that choose to apply themselves. There's a lot of people out there that I watch YouTube videos of people get asked questions, if I cut a pizza in 8 slices or 12, which one has more? The answer is neither. And I watch them say the pizza with 12, and that just alarms me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
So Friday night at my house is pizza night.
Okay.
Right. So we have rhythms and things we've put in place as well to try to, influence the culture of our home. Yeah. And Friday night it's pizza and a movie.
Yep.
So every Friday night, if my kids don't get pizza, I mean, there's gonna be a small revolt in my house.
We have donut day.
Okay.
So Saturday morning is donut day. So I almost never miss. I get up early.
Mm-hmm.
I can usually get one of my kids to get up and go. We go to the donut shop, pick out donuts. So we kick off Saturday. It's not a healthy habit, but it is for the enjoyment factor.
Of course.
It's a donut.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the exercise that you and your wife did, very similar to Carol and I. There's a thing called the Legato Legacy, and listened to a podcast, and this guy was basically talking about, I forget the guy's name. His name was not Legato. I don't know how they got to the Legato name, but very successful businessman. But I forget what his core value was that led him to do this. But they lived in like the slums, like a very poor part of their community, and his children had no idea that they had money.
Oh wow!
And his friends approached him and said, "Hey, I don't know if you know this, but this will not end well. Like, you just hiding this, entitlement. He did not want his kids to be entitled. And so they didn't know he had any money."
Wow.
And what he did was, the Legato Legacy was sort of the manifestation of how he decided to teach his children how to be successful human beings. And so they put certain things in place, milestones. And one of them was, it's great to be 8 And so you mentioned the conversations that you have with your children. We have those conversations at 8. Jesse just turned 8. And so we took him out and we talked about all the stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Sort of the law of firsts. Yeah. Open the door for all of the adult conversations because, we want to be seen as the experts on that. We don't want YouTube or a cultural influencer, to be the expert when my son is curious about something.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be. So go ahead.
Jump in. So you mentioned, trying to teach how to protect your kids from having an entitlement mentality.
Yeah.
So that's been one of those, I'd say it's a long-standing conversation me and my wife have, even in self-evaluation, right? Because, I would say in the United States, we are the most blessed country in the world. Even many of our people who are at our poverty line or below are still much better off than a good 1 to 2 billion people in the world.
Yeah.
When we talk about people in poverty, they still live in a home. They have running water. They have, electricity. And that's not the case in many areas of the world still. So It's always a point of reflection of going, even in America, when we think we have it bad, we still have it a lot better than a lot of people in the world.
Yeah.
And so how do we not lose sight of being blessed, even if, maybe our life doesn't look like we would dream it to look like, but to take time to be thankful.
Yes.
And to have gratitude for the things that you do have.
Yes.
Now. So I don't know, just even kick it over to you because you were just mentioning through some of that. How do you work through teaching your kids to be thankful and to not live entitled?
Yeah. So gratitude is our first core value. And that's something my wife and I have talked a lot about is how do we, because our children, our children have never known poverty. And thank God for that.
Right.
They've never known poverty. But that means they have no perspective for what poverty is. And so can they be truly grateful if they don't understand what poverty is? And so my wife and I have decided so Carol and Joanna just got back from Honduras.
Yeah.
And I believe it's through experiences like that they gain perspective.
Right.
And that they're not entitled. Because it's not, whenever my wife and I, we didn't, we've been very blessed. We work hard. But we have a perspective that our children don't have.
Right.
And so naturally we want to impose our perspective on them. And it's like, well, you ungrateful little, they truly cannot be grateful because they don't have perspective. Right. And so I think the way we try to expose them to that as children are things like the mission trip.
Yeah.
Right. So going to Honduras, getting to serve in an orphanage, getting to, build relationships with orphans that have been abandoned. And, I know even in the orphanage, they're talking about bringing in like psychologists and really trying to help with, people that struggle with abandonment, that have been abandoned. And, I've had the opportunity to go, I've been to LA several times and served on Skid Row and, really gotten to know people that are in that situation. And for me, that really gives me perspective. Yeah. And we also have to be honest and humble in the fact that, we are only 1 or 2 decisions away from any one of those situations. And I think, to your core value of responsibility, that's us teaching our children, like, look, you make bad decisions and then other people are going to make decisions for you. Yeah. Right. And that's where our legal system comes in ultimately. Yeah. Oh man, my wife and I, we also, as you raise children together, you really start to learn about how your wife was raised or how you were raised in perspective to them. And I remember the first time, I think one of our kids got, a minor infraction at school. And I laughed. I said, well, Carol, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, we'll just have a conversation. And you would have thought, oh man, so both of my wife's parents were teachers. Okay. And so there was no freedom in school. I mean, her parents are teachers, so everybody knows who she is. And I remember sort of popping off that, well, Pip, like, I got suspended from school several times. And I kid you not, if I had told her that before we'd gotten married, I don't know if we would have gotten married. I mean, my wife's thought, like, her trajectory is like suspension, juvie. Right. Like, you get suspended, the next stop is, you're
a convicted felon.
That's right, you're a convicted felon. Yeah. And I'm like, Carol, it's gonna be okay. Like, so we got a bad letter sent home. Yeah. We'll work on it.
Well, I can appreciate her perspective, though.
Yes.
Because too many teachers don't have parents back them up.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, that's a whole other topic. Yeah, my parents were, I specifically remember having a conversation with the principal, like, hey, do whatever you want to me, but don't call my dad. Like, let's leave this, it's between you and me, right? Because at home it was worse.
That's right. And
that's how it should be.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's even fun talking to some cops and police officers in small towns. They'll be like, like 40 years ago, I didn't have to send them to jail. I just said, I'm going to call your dad. And they'd be like, please take me to jail.
Yeah, take me to jail. I'll talk to my dad in the morning.
Yeah. So it's funny, the role that the role that fathers can play.
Yes.
In a kid's life. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to minimize anything that.
Oh, no.
But there is something that a father brings to the table that is very, very needed.
I agree.
So anyway, just that perspective, I do appreciate just don't call dad. Punch me as you will.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, man, and just the importance. I know, it's, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this, because both mothers and fathers are equally important. Absolutely. Right. So there's not a sense of inferiority or superiority in either role. Yeah. However, the roles are different.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, from my perspective is you need a kid raised in a two-parent home, and with a father and a mother. Anytime you're raised without one, that parent has to do double duty to try to bring in what the other would have provided. And again, I will broadly stereotype, but males and females are different.
Yes.
And there are things you will learn from a father that you won't learn from a mother, and vice versa. And you need both.
Yeah.
I mean, you really do to raise well-balanced children that have perspective. You need both.
I agree. Yeah. I in no way can I nurture my children like my wife. Absolutely. I can't do it.
I'm with you as well. I can try, but they know, like, if they want a hug and a cuddle, mm-hmm. they're going to go to mom.
That's right.
Not that I'm not there and available. I come over, I give them a hug, and it's like, I'll lay my head on your shoulder, and then I'm going to walk off and go see mom.
Yes.
Again, she just provides the level of comfort that on my best day, as hard as I try, I can't.
That's right.
Can't provide it.
That's right. But at bedtime, when someone's got to draw some hard lines, that's my job.
Yeah. And that's okay.
It is.
Part of the role is to teach them focus, work ethic, responsibility.
Yes.
Self-control. I feel like part of my job as a father is to teach at least my boys mm-hmm. self-control. Because, to be honest, I'll just do a little biology.
Yeah.
Testosterone is an aggression hormone.
Yes.
It causes aggressive behavior. That is why males are predominantly the perpetrators of violent crime.
Mm-hmm.
And like, my role is to teach my sons as they go through puberty, you're going to develop, like, you're going to have anger feelings. You're going to have aggression. My job is to teach you how to control it.
Yes.
That way you're there to protect, not to harm.
Yeah.
And like, you have to harness that in. You got boys, like,
mm-hmm.
you got to teach them to harness. You have to do that with yourself. Like,
yeah.
An adult.
Yes.
You'll have to work through of, like, I have to harness that
mm-hmm.
and direct it in a proper avenue.
Yeah. Yeah. Jordan Peterson has so much good stuff on that. Oh, yeah. On just how to, mainly stuff around masculinity but self-control is vital.
Yeah, I'm going to dive into just something that's been going on in my head that I've been really thinking about lately is the role of really not avoiding pain in our life. So pain avoidance is one of again, I don't have a stat on it, but just from observation, it's probably a leading indicator for future hardship in our life. So let's take, for instance, we'll use finances because we're,
Yeah.
It's easier to go take out a credit card and go buy that neat shiny than it is to put it off and save up and wait till you have the money. There's an amount of pain you endure when you don't get the thing you want, right? So that delayed gratification, you have to endure small amounts of pain that I don't get what I want. However, if I go out and buy it on the credit card, I'm gonna pay the principal and interest later. It's actually going to grow. There will be more pain, if you will, that you're going to experience later when you have that bill come due.
Yep.
Than if you paid it up front. Same thing with working out. You're going to go through small amounts of pain every time you work out. But if you do that consistently through your life, you will be in better shape as you age, and you won't experience a lot of the pain that you would have if you did not take care of your body.
Yes.
And so there's just those things of avoiding pain, even interpersonal relationships. If I avoid having a hard conversation with you because it's going to be uncomfortable, I might upset you, whatever it might be, those problems we put off grow. And so I've really just been diving through that, those moments where I avoid something that would be painful.
Yeah.
I put it off, and it's alone at that point, right? It's going to grow with interest. And this is how we destroy relationships. This is how we destroy our country. Like, I'll bring it back to a political space.
Yeah.
We have a rapidly mounting federal debt that if you look at it on the chart, it goes, sideways, it's growing a little bit, and it goes vertical. We're now at the point where we're counting trillions. Somebody's got to pay that bill. It will come due, and there's going to be a generation, one of our generations is going to have to make the choice to bite the bullet, and we're going to have to stop the spending, and it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to have to go through hard times where we can't just print more dollars.
Yep.
And so, to me, again, I want to teach my kids that when you avoid painful things, like, working out, whatever you might be, like, it will come due at some point. And pay it up front. You'll be healthier. You'll live longer.
Yep.
You'll be happier. You'll have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's just one of those things I've been musing over lately.
Yeah.
Of like, we're all going to go through pain, but I do get to choose maybe when I experience some of it. There's certain things that happen to you that's out of your control. There's a lot in our control that we just avoid.
Yeah.
We need to tackle it.
Yeah, man, the national debt. Maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe we won't. Are you familiar with the book "There's No Such Thing as Dragons"?
No,
I think it's by Mark Kent. That I may be totally off on the author, but the book is for sure "There's No Such Thing as Dragons." Jordan Peterson, and I'll send you a link to it, does a wonderful talk, and it's like old school. He's got like the transparency slide deck projector. And so the whole premise of the book is this boy. So it's a children's book.
Okay.
And it's like that thick. But this boy wakes up and, he goes downstairs and then he goes up and is getting dressed, and there's a dragon in his room. A little dragon, like a cute little baby dragon. And he goes down and he tells his mother, he says, "Mom, there's a dragon in my room." And she says, "Don't be silly. There's no such thing as dragons." And so he goes back up to his room, and the dragon walks up, and he petted the dragon to start with, but now he ignores it because, of course, there's no such thing as a dragon, and so why would you pet something that wasn't really there? And so as they ignore the dragon grows, and soon enough the dragon is so big it takes up the whole hallway. And so the mom, to clean the house, has to go through the living room and out the window to clean the house because the dragon is getting larger. And then the dragon basically is as big as the whole house.
Yep.
And the dragon runs away with the house, follows a bread truck down the road. And the father comes home and the house is not there. And so he finally finds the house and he says, what are you guys doing? And he's like, there's a dragon. And the mom says, there's no such thing as dragons. And he's like, well, of course there's a dragon. Yeah. And once they acknowledge the dragon, once they, do the painful thing, the dragon starts to shrink. And the dragon gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's a manageable size.
Yes.
But, how many homes do you know that have dragons in them? Yep. Families that aren't willing to have the hard conversation.
Yeah.
Or, discipline their children because that's what's going to be best for them in the long run. And what happens is, obviously the dragon is a metaphor, for other things, the things that we ignore and avoid, don't want to address. And those things, like you said, they grow and they take a life of their own. And, sometimes they carry your house away.
That's right. And, I can hear my wife's voice in my head saying, bring balance to this. So here's my balance is that when you tackle problems, you have to do it from a perspective of love.
Oh, of course.
So if you need to have a hard conversation with somebody, it needs to be for their benefit.
Yes.
Not just to make you feel better. So, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Do things out of a perspective for others and love. And you'll do well if you do that.
Yeah. Have you ever, there's another book, The Stories We Tell Ourselves.
Sounds
familiar. Well, it's familiar because it's that phrase has been in our culture. And when I say culture, I mean, our church culture. It's been in our culture for a long time. But, we were in a meeting months and months ago and, someone kept saying that. I'm like, where do you get that language? And there was no good answer for it. So I found the book. But it is fantastic because a lot of times, especially when there's a dragon or a hard conversation, we have this internal dialogue. We have this story that we're telling ourselves about the situation.
Yep.
And if we would be honest and we would understand, hey, I have this internal dialogue, it might be true and it might not be true.
Yeah.
But that, for me, that has really given me language to go to some other person in love and say, hey, this is the situation, and this is the story I'm telling myself.
Right.
Is this true or is this not true? And most of the time, it's not true.
That's right.
Right. So we have all these biases in our history that we bring into these relationships. Baggage is probably a good term for it. But yeah, we just have these stories we tell ourselves, and
that's one of the reasons it's so important that you stay curious. And stay as a learner, because a lot of times we tell ourselves a story. Let's say I'm driving in traffic and somebody cuts me off. I assume they're such a jerk. They're, whatever. They may be pregnant and trying to get to
the hospital. Yeah.
But who knows what's going on in that other car?
Yeah.
But we have to stay curious and we have to go, there could be other possibilities that I might need to learn about here.
Yeah.
And if you can approach people like that, you'll often find that sometimes these hard conversations aren't so hard, because you tell somebody the story you had going on, like, this is what I saw happen and it made me think this. Is that what's going on? And often they'll be like, not at all. Sometimes they'll be shocked that you thought that.
Yes.
Like, I'm sorry if I even gave you that impression.
Yes.
And so oftentimes those conversations de-escalate very easily when you don't approach them with certainty to say, I can't believe you cut me off. You're such a jerk.
Yeah.
Instead of approaching them from, well, we were pulling in, you zipped in front of me really close and you almost hit my car. What was going on? Are you guys okay? Or y'all trying to rush somewhere? What's happening? So anyways.
Yeah. Have you ever, surely you've watched the This Is Water?
Yeah.
Richard Wallace Foster? Yeah. Very, very similar thought.
Yeah.
And that is, someone cuts you off in traffic. Maybe they have a loved one that just got to the ER and they're trying to, get to the ER. But, we think, well, that person's trying to kill me.
That's right.
Well, probably not.
It's because we're the center of our own little world.
Exactly.
And I have to tell this to my kids all the time. I'm like, you are not the center of the world. like there's other people around you, and make sure that you don't just think about you. And I tell them that because I have to give myself that speech all the time.
Yes.
I mean, I work in politics now, and so if I'm trying to get something done, it's really easy to get upset at people for decisions they made. And I have to step back and go, you know what? They have constituents of their own. They have other people that they may be voting that way for that reason.
Yeah.
And it's not about me. And so you just have to take a broader perspective. Remember, there's other people around.
Yeah.
And it works best if you put God in the center of the universe and not yourself.
That's right. Yeah. And I love the perspective of being a learner, always being curious, because even if we've talked about all, some of the cultural issues that we're facing, if you have a conversation from that perspective, it tends to not escalate. Like if you really are curious as to how other people think, why they think the things they think.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's also, giving people the benefit of the doubt. They're not, just trying to destroy things. Now, some people, maybe that is their objective, but, coming at it from the perspective of a learner or being curious, I really think, people do things for a reason. I mean, it's family history or background, and us too, right? But, at some point, even your core value of responsibility, like we have to take responsibility for ourselves, who we are, and what we're doing.
Yeah. And one of the things I always I think I've learned maybe through life, I don't know where I got it, but to always remember is that nobody does something that they think is wrong intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
When you have behaviors, they come out of some value system in you that thinks that what I'm doing is the best thing I could be doing. Now, it's easy to judge other people when they do choices you wouldn't make. Right?
Yeah.
But I always try to tell my kids, even they're like, well, how can they do that? Like, remember, they don't think that they're wrong.
That's right.
And you shouldn't approach it with certainty that you're right. And I have conversations with people that we have vastly different political opinions. We have vastly different opinions on how policy should be done. But to me, it's always like, I'm great to sit down. Let's have a conversation because you have a perspective and you have that perspective for a reason. There's life history. There's many, many reasons that people have different views than you.
Yep.
And again, stay curious.
Yeah.
And don't assume they're a bad person. I think this is one of the things infecting our country so much right now with red versus blue, Democrat, Republican. I mean, recently somebody tried to assassinate, a presidential candidate, Trump. You can't get to that spot without a certain level of hatred and a certain level of just dislike for somebody with a different.
That's right.
And you just have to remember, like, there are people too, they have a whole life history that they came from that informed how they think.
Yep.
And don't write them off for it. Have a conversation. And my favorite thing is when we can have vastly different opinions and still be friends.
Yeah.
And that it can be hard to do. Like, it can be a hard thing to do, but I have people I don't agree with that we've learned to appreciate each other as people.
Yeah.
And so, like, we just know, like, we're not going to see eye to eye on this one. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, we can still go do something fun after.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Oh man. So this whole idea of like fiduciary responsibility, I feel like I should disclaim that from a compliance perspective, but maybe fiduciary responsibility. I mean, you mentioned the growing, national debt. I mean, my gosh, we teach a lot on, personal financial responsibility, doing things that are smart and not just completely stupid or destructive. But yeah, it's like, as a country, if we don't have the money, we shouldn't be spending it.
Yeah.
So is there any path forward to start to develop, a sense of that from the federal level or the state level even?
Yeah. I would say my personal opinion is that at this point, I don't think there's any easy path.
No.
I think we passed easy.
Yeah. Most people can't even comprehend what $1 trillion is.
No. I mean, I'm aware of what it is, but when you try to put it in physical items or blows your brain.
Yeah, I think I wish I could remember the exact stat, because I just did this. I spoke on a Wednesday night, and if you take like $1 bills and line them up, I think you can get to the sun like 7.5 or 17.5 times with a trillion.
And you can't even fathom how far it really is to the sun.
No,
your brain really doesn't comprehend.
No, it's too large of a number. Yeah.
So at this point, I don't think there's an easy path. Any choice we make, it is going to be a hard road, and it's going to be a painful road. We have to be willing to pay that road, though, like as a country, if we want to stay viable.
Yeah.
If you look at history, when you look at graphs like the one we have going right now, sadly in history, often it's either the failure of the currency that happens or the failure of the country. Something drastic happened. You can't keep that pace up forever. So, I would say at this point, we're going to have to either do something to boost the economy and flatten spending, right? You've got to get revenue above expenses. It really is. It's simple math, but it's a hard position to get to.
Yeah.
Right? We've got to either hold the budget flat and get our income up, or we're going to have to cut the budget, which from my perspective, federally, there's a whole lot of things in the federal government that doesn't even need to be there.
That's right. Yes.
The Department of Education, I'm talking about the federal one, not the state. The federal Department of Education is not one of the powers left to Congress. That should not exist.
Yeah.
That is left to the states and the states alone.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that the federal government's holding that is not their responsibility to hold. They need to get rid of it and then let the states, we're closer to the people. We get to make those choices.
Yes.
We'll do a better job of it.
Yeah.
So I think we need to cut a lot of the federal programs, and we need to re-empower the states to make those hard choices. But in Oklahoma, we have to have a balanced budget.
Yeah.
So it's a different perspective from the federal one. But I'll let you in on some insider baseball.
Okay.
So every state that has to have a balanced budget gets to do it with federal funds, right? So when you think this through, we get to, let's take education. I'm on the education budget committee.
Yeah.
So we appropriate, roughly half-ish of what our schools use. Then about 30% of it comes from local funds that they'll get from property taxes. And then about 20% of their budget's coming from federal dollars.
Okay.
That's a balanced budget. If we had to cut off the federal spending of education, there goes 20% of the budget.
Yeah.
Now the state's got to come up with it. However, you cut back the federal taxes and let those taxes be done at the state level.
Oh, I would, yeah.
And here's the thing: people are responsive at the state level. If we try to raise taxes, people have the option to vote no. But they get to live with the consequence of maybe you don't get a new road or a new bridge or school. And so that's my perspective, is ultimately we need to get it out of the federal government, have them do what they're supposed to. They're supposed to take care of the national welfare with, let's take the Army, the military branches to have national defense. Let them do what they're supposed to do. Give the rest back to the state. Get the taxing back at the state level, where you and I get to vote on if we're going to support that tax or not, and then rebalance. But on balanced budgets, yes, the state has to have a balanced budget, but we get a lot of federal dollars, as does every single state.
Yeah. Well, I would much rather pay tax at the state level than the federal level.
Oh, I would too, because, me as a state representative, I represent about 40,000 people. That's a lot more feasible if people want to reach out to me. And I call people back. Like, how often do you get your federal senator to call you back? That's not going to happen maybe ever, unless you're a very important person.
Yeah.
I call people back. So when it comes to, if there's a tax policy coming up and somebody reaches out to me, they actually have the chance to talk with me and hear with me. So I'm with you. I'd much rather have it at a more local level where we can have input.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some of the things you're working on at the state level?
Oh, man.
And maybe not like all of them. We probably don't have time for that, but what are just some of the primary things that you're focused on this coming session?
So one of the things, we're in the process right now of doing 2 interim studies One of them is to look at setting up a gold and silver bullion reserve in Oklahoma and make it transactional. And that's the big piece. It's not just about having a depository. A private business could do that. But right now, the federal Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, it says that gold and silver are left as legal tender to the states.
Okay.
So that's a right every state has at this moment. So what we can do is you can use gold and silver to transact business if you wanted to. However, it's really, really hard, right? If I were to come in here and bring you like an ounce of gold, I
could do nothing with that.
Like, what are you going to do with it? Nothing. You can't go spend it. You can't buy coffee with it. So what we can do is you set up a depository at the state level. You can either buy gold through the depository and go online and say, I want to buy $1,000 of gold.
Yeah.
Bring your own, whatever, put it there. So they will hold physical gold. This is not a paper market.
Yeah.
It's physical gold being held.
Do you get a certificate or something?
You'll have an account with them.
Yeah.
Right. But they would have annual audits. They'll you have the state auditor who would audit them. You'd also have the gold bars that have to be inspected and evaluated.
Of course.
So that'll all be done. But now you've got physical gold being held. So this is, a real object there. And then you get a debit card essentially. So you can have MasterCard back at Visa card. And so you go to Starbucks and you swipe your card, buy, your coffee or whatever. They deduct it from your account balance. So whenever you're ready, if you want, you could go up there and say, hey, I want to cash out. You could ask for cash, or you could say, I want to take physical delivery of gold in an equivalent amount. So what you would essentially do is you make gold and silver transactional. You bring it back where it's usable again. And then in America right now, I shouldn't say America, in the United States, there's about 850 billion or so of gold that we know of in the United States. So you effectively make that amount of capital be usable for transactions. So if I wanted to now buy a piece of land, I could do so.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard at this point. You have to go find somebody who
will accept gold,
exchange it. So what this would essentially do is it would unlock again, no longer a fiat, but a gold-backed, if you will, currency.
Yeah.
It's really not gold-backed currency. Gold is the currency, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No. And you mentioned, you use the term fiat, which I'm familiar with, but can you unpack that just real briefly?
Yeah. So fiat currency is literally, it is a piece of paper issued by a government that they're saying this is on our good faith is like an IOU. That's really all it is saying we certify that this is worth something, whatever that happens to be. And I'll give a really quick history. So in the United States, we used to have gold-backed currency. Everybody, if you do remember, Fort Knox is where we kept gold. In, I think it's 1974, it's either 71, 74, President Nixon took us off the gold standard. When he did that, we officially became a pure fiat currency where there was nothing backing it, which is why your government can print an unlimited number of dollars when they want to. And that's what happened in 2020. You saw when everybody got checks in the mail, those were government printed dollars. So essentially, the beauty of something like gold is you can't print more of it. You can go find it, but it's expensive to do, and it is hard to mine and get it down into a gold bar. So essentially, we're taking it back. Our founding fathers did not like paper currency. They had lived through fiat currency.
Yeah.
If you look at history, states would issue it and they would go bankrupt. They'd fail. All these bad things would happen. So if you ever heard the phrase, it's not worth a continental, that was a paper dollar back then. Yeah. So anyways, that's my small tidbit.
Well, I love the whole riff on fiat currency. I mean, we could talk about that forever. Fiat currency, the creation of the Fed. Have you ever heard a book called Debt by David Graeber?
No.
Yeah. So there's a book called Debt. Actually, I thought we might get into something like that. David Graeber was an anthropologist.
Okay.
And so he actually studied the creation of currency from, I'm going to say, is it anthropological? I don't know, maybe.
Sounds good.
From the perspective of an anthropologist, he studied the creation of currency. And, Econ 101, right? You're taught that currency is created to what?
Well, it's to transact business.
That's right.
A medium of exchange.
That's right. Well, from an anthropological, we have to correct that out. That's probably not the right way to say it. From that perspective, history does not support that, period. But what history does support is the creation of currency for the taxation of the citizens for the expansion of a kingdom.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so kingdoms would create currency so they could tax their citizens and go to war and expand their kingdom. So if you look at history, that's what history supports.
Yeah, and I would say over history,
what do we see?
What we tend to come back to is gold and silver.
Yes.
5,000 years of history consistently is gold and silver will be the remaining item that has been used to transact business. And, one of the things is that, when we use the term inflation, and a lot of people are becoming more familiar with it
yes.
than they probably ever have.
Yeah, especially the last couple of years.
It's been harsh watching prices go up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been rephrasing this with people like, man, I can't believe the price of that went up. I'm like, I think your dollar went down.
That's right. The price of your dollar went down.
Now, that egg is still worth what an egg was worth.
Yeah.
Your dollar's not worth as much.
That's right.
The reason I hate inflation so much is because inflation is theft. What happens is if I have worked my whole life, and let's say I stashed up $1 million and I've got it there for retirement.
That's right.
And to give to my kids to have a legacy, when the government prints dollars, they tend to distribute it through banks.
That's right.
And it goes to businesses, corporations. Guess who doesn't get those dollars?
You.
Me.
That's right.
So my $1 million just lost purchasing ability.
That's right.
Power.
Yep.
And so I have essentially been stolen from.
Yes.
The one thing that you've probably heard is, power will corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yes.
When we have fiat currency, human nature, we cannot apparently resist at some point printing extra dollars to get us what we want.
That's right.
And so the reason I like something like gold or silver, because we remove the temptation.
Yeah, there's a limited amount of it.
It's limited.
Yes.
And so if you have stashed your wealth somewhere like that, the government can't redistribute that unless they literally steal it, which that has happened before.
Mm-hmm.
But inflation is theft, and we need to protect our people from it. And so I'll just kind of wrap up with, since 2020, and I'm going to just round up a little bit.
Yeah.
You've had 25 to 30% inflation depending on where you live and different things of that nature. If you had held your wealth in gold, you would have seen your wealth go up around 40 to 50%. So on one side, you lost a good chunk of purchasing power. On the other side, you actually gained buying ability.
Mm-hmm.
And so the government, though it printed dollars, it could not devalue the people who held gold. And so I haven't been a huge gold bug or gold fan my whole life. People, they'll hear me talk about this and think I must be a gold bug. I'm not.
Yeah.
What I am for is for sound monetary principles.
Yes.
And removing the ability from politicians and legislators from being able to print as much money as they want, because it's hard to say no. And that's what we're finding is they'll do what they have to stay in power. A lot of legislators, they don't make the principled stance of saying no when it's best for the country. They'll say yes to stay elected. And so we need to fix that where our money is sound again.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of that pain thing you were talking about, right? We have to do the hard things today, so we don't have to do the, extremely hard things in the future.
That's right. Yep.
Well, Cody, I really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
I thought the conversation was fascinating. We'll see what everyone else thinks.
Okay.
So thank you everyone for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you would, please like and subscribe. And you can find us in all your podcast venues. Thank you very much.